Charles Ring is a farmer in Trump territory. He plants sorghum, corn and cotton across 70 square kilometres of farmland in Texas. Much of his crop ends up in China. But tariffs imposed by Beijing in response to President Donald Trump's penalties on Chinese goods has hit his business hard.
Normally, in a good year, all of this is full of corn or sorghum and sorghum. This year, we didn't fill up these 4 bins. They were all short. In fact, all the sorghum would fit in that one tank. And so only 3 of these bins, they didn't even get close to full.
On behalf of the
It's a story that's heard more and more as the Trump administration ramps up its trade war with America's biggest competitor, China.
We will not allow our workers to be victimized, our companies to be cheated, and our wealth to be plundered and transferred. America will never apologize for protecting its citizens.
As Beijing's retaliatory measures began to hurt, the White House announced a $12 billion rescue plan for American farmers. But Ring says he's only entitled to a $300 subsidy.
It's not going to cover us. It's appreciated, but it's not going to cover what we lost. We need the markets back. We'll benefit more from the added funding to our export programs than these little payments are going to do.
And it seems a new report by the European Central Bank backs that view. Its study simulates a 10% US tariff on all imports and a similar retaliation from other countries. The findings suggest the US would have the most to lose from these trade wars, while China would be better off after retaliating. Global trade is also expected to suffer. A fall of up to 3% is projected. While the bank's model is purely theoretical, for farmers like Charles Ring, the impact of the tariffs is all too real. Auskar Surbakti, TRT World.
So let's go to New York next. Joining us from there is Max Wolff. He's chief economist at the Phoenix Group. Max, great to have you on the show once again. So let's talk about this ECB report. It says the US is most likely to be the worst loser, the biggest loser. It also says that US growth could be cut by as much as 2 percentage points. Is that what your research is pointing to as well?
Yeah, so we don't have an exact global trade impact forecast. Looked more at the U.S., and I think we're concerned not in the initial effects. So a lot of folks have looked at the initial effects and think those are going to be a fraction of 1 GDP point in the U.S., so maybe somewhere between 0.2 and 0.4 percentage points of GDP maximum direct impact. That's probably about right for direct impact. The problem for us and why we're much closer in our sense of the total impact to the European Central Bank report or ECB report is that we believe this is the beginning of a series of knocked down dominoes. It's a domino effect. What the United States has done is remove one of the global champions of free trade, the US, and turn them into the largest, loudest, most brash, and kind of most rejectionist of the basic historical fact opponent of free trade. And so I think we're going to unfortunately see a lot of tit for tat, a lot of retaliations, a lot of stories, very sad stories all over the world, like the one you just filed about those farmers trying to figure out what it means when what you've built to and bet on is ripped away from you by somebody's ideological commitments.
Yeah, that really is where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark. I mean, that particular farmer was in Texas, which is Trump country. Donald Trump says he wants to protect people like that, but it's not going that way, is it?
Yes, so I mean, I think the world will do well to know that Trump country is a phrase that folks throw around, many folks associated with the president, but keep in mind that these are big states and big people, and we have a lot of issues in the U.S. here, and about half of the people who should vote do, and a little less than half of those people actually voted for Donald Trump, and he's never really had an approval rating above 40%. So America's a big place, and it has some diversity. And tariffs don't discriminate, right? So whether you voted for the president or against him, whether you're a fan of or against any one of his policies, you're just as without your economic opportunity.
Yeah, let's turn this around. Let's look at it from China's point of view. By contrast, the report from the ECB says that China would gain by exporting more to third countries. Is China really going to be able to substitute the loss of US markets by selling to other countries, possibly even Europe?
So eventually, long-term, China or anyone else can make all kinds of substitutions and can lessen the short-term impact. That's true with the U.S. sourcing slightly differently. It's also true with the Chinese sourcing differently for inputs and or finding different markets. But the truth is, finding another buyer as large as the U.S. isn't easy. The United States is 4.5% of the world's population, but we do about 19% of the world's total consumption. So we're pretty hard to replace. Likewise, China is a bit of a workshop to the world, and so replacing Chinese production isn't so easy to do. And I guess the question comes from the logic that folks like President Trump use, and that logic is so wrong and so outdated that almost any debate that stems from its acceptance is likely to hit the rocks and not steer between them. By this I mean, we don't really live in a world where major economic agents are governments. That's just the way people think about things when they're whipped into a frenzy of patriotic or foreign-hating zeal. The truth is that transnational corporations and mid and small-sized companies who happen to be associated with one country do business increasingly across international boundaries, and the opportunities, the rules, the parameters we live with every day are those built and given to us by globalization. So I think it's very hard to play modular here, right? Very difficult.
Yeah, Max, very quickly, this week we've seen the US sign a trade deal with South Korea. They're in talks with Japan and the European Union once again. Do you think the Trump administration has belatedly learned that it can have a lot more effect against China if it corrals its allies on its side?
Sure, it's almost like a very stupid, very late version to get back to getting to the TPP deal that they famously and happily and aggressively rejected. So trying to piece together a crappy version of the deals you rejected a few months earlier might be better than smashing them against the wall for the temporary thrill of the sound of breaking glass, but I'm not sure it makes you a genius. It just makes you somebody with crazy glue and cuts on their fingers.
Now there's a picture to take home with you. Max Wolff in New York, thank you very much indeed.